The best of weeks in this country as far as the economy is concerned. We had a dreadful week, and those very dismal figures, let's start with that, showing the number of jobless people has increased in the country. We also saw power utility Eskom showing us that it had a 20 billion rand loss for the 2018-2019 financial year. And all indications are that it will continue to be dependent on taxpayer money in the near future. Then comes the rand. Now, the rand has lost close to 80 cents since the 24th of last month as central banks in developed economies downplay cutting interest rates as aggressively as anticipated. That was one of the main reasons for the rand doing what it did, but certainly domestic circumstances didn't help. And then the JSE. Today, closing the week, it looks like it, in the red as the US and China continues with its spat. We know that President Donald Trump now imposing 10% tariffs on $300 billion or $1 million worth of goods coming out of China. So indeed, it hasn't been too great. Joseph Busher from J.M. Busher Investments now helping us to just sort of take stock of exactly what we saw this week. Joseph, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I want to start with the rand. I mean, look, surely we're used to the fact that this local currency is a very volatile one. The market usually sort of pencils that in. But at 14 rand 70 today, surely this is going to have inflationary effects.
This is massive, and I think possibly thank you in hindsight to Governor Lesesha Hanyao, who basically did not really heed the market in terms of being aggressive in cutting rates. So he was buying insurance. That's why he cut the interest rates by 25 basis points. The rand is very volatile. You know, it's very difficult, I think, for the central banker to be able to manage those inflationary pressures. Remember, we've been helped a little bit by the oil price, which has been stuck around 63, 60 level. But if the rand goes towards 15, certainly I think in the next few months or so next year, inflation will be ticking up again.
And then, look, we've got the JC in the red and the rand down. Much of it has got to do with what Donald Trump did over the past few hours. I mean, 10% tariffs on $300 billion worth of Chinese goods. It's not making the Asian markets, or anyone for that matter, happy. But surely our domestic situation didn't help. As I said, we had a gloomy week this week. Those employment numbers were bad. Does it look like government has a strong hand on what's happening with Eskom? So no reason for the rand to strengthen on domestic events, are there?
There's no reason at all. And you talked about the global issues. Japan and South Korea, they've got their own tiff as well. And you mentioned Mr. Trump saying he's not happy with the Fed chairperson by just decreasing rates by 25 basis points. So there's a lot of political interference or influence that is creeping into the markets. And the same here if you talk about domestic market. Eskom, our biggest elephant in the room, because it powers our industries, it powers our schools, it powers everything. Looking for another possibly 50 billion, 60 billion to be funded by National Treasury after posting 20 billion loss. So it's not going very well, given the fact that also in terms of your CEO executive, there's no stability. There's too much changes in terms of the, the people at the helm of our state-owned entities. So that does not help the rand, because Moody's is actually watching us and saying possibly the next look might be negative. They're the only rating agents that have been keeping us in the grade level.
Now, I want to take you back to about 10 months ago, yes. The job summit in October. It was right here in Sandton. We had a lot of interventions being mentioned. We'll bring up exactly what was stipulated or actually agreed upon at that conference. Here are the resolutions, Joseph. And remember the president telling us at that conference that there will be a creation of 270,000 jobs a year. He also said that we will continue to buy local, we'll increase our exports, we'll work on the agricultural value chains, support small businesses, and we may have more jobs. Well, today's numbers tell us exactly the opposite happened. What's your take?
So, unemployment rose, possible about 30%. This is the official. Unofficial could be higher than 30%. So the minister told us, says, we need now to meet on a monthly basis, to be able to review, which is business, labor, and certain government through NEDLAC, to be able to meet to discuss the job crisis, I can call it the job crisis in South Africa. Now, if you're going to meet every month, it means there's a problem. right? It means they haven't implemented the things they wanted to implement. To make
and
sure
I want to come in there, in the middle of your answer. You also pointed to the fact that, look, there were elections happening. There was a change in cabinet. So all of those things preoccupied government. What do you make of that?
Well, there was no change in government. I've always said that. I think, the ruling party needs to make sure that, they are accountable, they take responsibility, rather than to keep on, passing the buck and blaming somebody. The president was the deputy president. Mr. Nglesi was in government. So if you look at overall, there hasn't been very much changes. Mr. Pravin Gordhan was in government. So where are the changes? Patel was in government. So there isn't much change from the executive perspective other than the Minister of Justice, Ramola. So for me, I think it's not about that. It's about implementation. It's making sure that the chief restructuring officer at ESCOM is appointed. We saw Mr. Mark Barnes resigning from postal office.
Yep.
So how do we get the country going if there is instability from a leadership perspective? So what we need to do is to be able to say, let's look at all the industries that really would create jobs, and that's also manufacturing. The agricultural sector is very important to make sure that there's food price stability and it does not filter to the nation.
Yeah, well, something really, really has to happen on a concrete level. Thanks very much indeed, Joseph Busher from JM Busher Investments.